Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate it. I also love it if you leave a comment. I'd like to hear what you think. I periodically get asked by someone to show how I size a ring, so today I'm going to show how to size a ring up and how to size a ring down. I'm actually going to do two different rings on this one. I'm going to take a piece out of a simple band and show you the things you'd need to consider in order to get it to the size you want it to be. I'm also going to size up a ring that my mom bought somewhere and is asking me to size up, so I'm going to show you how to do that. And before we do that, though, I want to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I really appreciate their support in all ways. And I have two new ones. I'm not sure if I thanked LR, who signed up a while back, and if I didn't, I apologize, it took so long. And then I have a new one, SJ, who signed up. So thank you both for signing up. I appreciate your support. The other group is my YouTube supporters, and we just passed 11,800 subscribers. Thank you for that. If you're not a subscriber, I'd love it if you were, so consider that. But thank you for all the nice comments and the financial contributions like the Buy Me a Coffee and the Super Thanks. Those really help considering silver's gone so high right now, so I really do appreciate it. All right, well, let's get started on sizing some rings. This is my design idea book that you can get on my merch store if you're interested. There's a number of different cover designs. There's even a new one that has a conversion chart on it, which I think would be useful. It converts from fractions of inches to decimals and to millimeters as well. That way it makes it easy to be able to figure out what size you're dealing with. I didn't have a lot to draw up on this one since this one is mostly a kind of a skill video. But there are some things you should probably consider if you're going to do sizing for someone. As soon as you learn how to do this, from my experience, everyone in your family and all of your friends have some jewelry that they either need sized or fixed. And until you have some experience, I would not recommend doing that. Send them to a bench jeweler who does that all the time and is going to be able to do a good job of it. I am primarily a silversmith who makes things. I am not a silversmith who repairs other people's stuff because I just don't have the experience or the desire to do that kind of thing. Once in a while, though, I will do it for a close friend or something if I make them promise not to tell anybody that I did it. But here's some things to consider before you size a ring for someone. The first one is, do you know what types of solder were used in the construction of the ring that you're going to size? And the reason that matters is because you're probably going to cut a piece out or add a piece in to the band at some place. And if, for instance, they used all four different types of commonly used solders, the hard, medium, easy, and extra easy solder, then you probably don't want to use hard solder to fix the sizing on the ring, because some of those other solder joints may fall apart on you and then you'd be fixing the whole thing up again, which I don't think probably you want to do. So one of the things that I do is I don't mind sizing something that I've made too much because I know exactly what solders that I used for that. So that's something to consider. The second thing, does the ring have a stone? Because most stones can't stand the kind of heat we're doing, so you have to remove them before you size the ring. They do make a number of products that you can pack around the stone itself to try and keep the heat away from it. However, from my experience, and knowing that silver doesn't solder very well unless you get the entire piece up to the soldering temperature you need it to be, insulating a portion of the piece makes it harder to get a good solder joint on it. From my experience, the products that I've tried, I haven't had a lot of luck keeping the heat from the stone anyway. They're messy, they smell bad, and they don't always protect the stone as much as you'd like them to. So my best advice to you is don't do that unless you absolutely have to, and if you can, remove the stone. There's also some situations where the stone is just about impossible to remove, and that would be the case with like inlay, because it's usually epoxied in, and in order to get that out you'll have to use some solvents and things like that, which may damage the stone too. So it's really kind of a lot of work to do stuff like that, and again, something like that, I would definitely send someone to a bench jeweler who knows what they're doing about that kind of thing. The third thing that I would think about is when I change the size, when I change the size of the ring, is it going to affect the structure of the ring? Because some rings are situated in such ways that if you make them much smaller, it's going to distort the ring so strangely that it's going to look odd. And that's not the case with all rings, but I got a few out to show you some situations that may make it difficult to size a ring. So here's an example of one where you can't really size it without changing the look of it. Or if you did, you'd have to take quite a bit of time to do it because it's symmetrical on both sides like this. So if I cut a piece out of here, it's going to change the overall look of the ring. I could theoretically probably cut a piece, you know, a chunk out of this side and a chunk out of this side and solder all three of those back together on both sides. But that would be a relatively, it might not be worth it. It might be easier just to make another ring in a smaller size, is what I would suggest. This is not my favorite ring, but it's one I did experimentally a while back. And you can't really change this unless you change the size of this entire loop in here. So you'd have to pull both of those loops out of there, maybe add an extra line up top and make a smaller loop, or take one out and add a bigger loop. So you can't just cut a piece out of this one because it'll distort the entire ring if you changed its shape that way. So that's something to think about. Of course, if you have a spinner like this, not something you can easily change the size of. It would probably be easier to make a similar one in a different size for someone. This one I brought out just because it's got kind of a texture. I just dapped a texture in there with some dapping punches, I think. And if I did cut a piece out of there, it probably would affect, you know, you'd be able to see where I cut it, and it may end up looking kind of ugly. So I guess you probably could pull it apart right here, you know, cut a piece off there and then round those corners and reattach it, but that would be the only way to do it without having some kind of visible mark there, unless you're very, very good. So, which I'm probably not at sizing things. Same way with this one. This one I did for my Patreon group for a Patreon exclusive video. It's just got a lot of stuff going on the bottom where you would probably cut it to size it. It might be hard to get everything to line up again to do that one, so I probably would just make another one. The fourth thing is, does it have a pattern that you can that's going to be messed up if you cut a piece out? So this is something I made about 20 years ago, and my wife took it a long time ago. But if you have to cut a little piece out of this, it's going to mess up the pattern somewhere. So unless you just happen to be able to size it exactly one full iteration there of that repeated pattern. So same deal with something like this where it's got a repeated pattern in the band. You could size it, but it's going to have a definite difference in that spot where it'll be pretty noticeable. Well, here's one that has complicated. I'm kind of like this ring. I made this one a while back, but it's got a texture here. But I think you probably could get by with cutting a piece out of there, sizing it down a little bit, and it wouldn't do it too much. But you may have a limit to how much you could size it down, because part of the circle that your finger goes through on this one is carved right into the top of the ring here. And so that might make that not so circular anymore if you make it too much smaller, or too much bigger, I suppose. So here's one where you probably could get by with it. This is one I made my wife a long time ago. It's soldered together from about here to about here, so I could take a piece out that size probably without having too many problems, because it's not going to change the overall look that much. However, if you look at it from the side, if I take a pretty big chunk out and I make this that much smaller, it's going to do some weird stretching up here on things, and so it may do some distortion to the overall look of the piece, so you might want to consider that kind of thing too. And the last consideration is can you fix it if you mess it up? So there's no worse feeling when somebody asks you to fix something of theirs that they really care about, and you've ruined it irreparably. So unless you're sure you can fix something for somebody, and usually, like I said, I wouldn't do it for anybody but a friend, probably. Make sure you can fix it if you mess it up. All right, so to start with today, I have a little silver band right here. I'm going to take it from about 9 1/4 and reduce the size to about an 8, just to demonstrate how I would do that. Okay, so first thing I'm going to need to do is find the solder joint, and it's oxidized a little bit, so I can actually see it's right over here, and so I'll probably cut it right on that solder joint. Now, if you can't find it, one trick you can do that works sometimes is if you heat it up just a little bit and let it cool so it oxidizes the whole thing, the solder, even the hard silver solder, will oxidize just a tiny bit different, and so sometimes that'll make the solder joint a little more visible. Let's heat it up and see how that works. Let that cool off for a minute. It's probably going to be a little hard to see on camera. Right here, there's a little line of solder that shows up now. So that makes it a little more easy to pick exactly where I'm going to cut this to make it smaller. So I'll let that cool off the rest of the way for a minute. And while that's cooling, we find a piece of scratch paper. And so, like I said, that ring is a 9 1/4, so it ends up right about here on the mandrel. So let's make a mark right about there. Okay. That's cooled off enough to handle it. Let's just double check. Yeah, so it's about right there. Okay. And we want to go down to an 8. So the easiest way to find out how big of a piece to cut out, I have found anyway, is let's wrap a strip of paper right around the 9 1/4, kind of center it right over that. And I'm going to use my pencil to get a more precise mark. Do it right where they meet. And then let's wrap it around the 8, right where they meet. Make sure it's snug. And make a mark where they meet. You can see that little piece there. That's how long of a piece I need to take out of my ring in order to get it to be about an 8. So that'll make it pretty easy to decide how big a chunk to cut out. So let's go do that with the saw real quick. If you haven't had a chance, I have my ebook for sale on my merch store, and what it is it's a guide to my 2023 YouTube videos as well as my Patreon videos, and it has a page for each one. It includes the original sketch that I drew. It includes the final picture of it. It has a list of the materials you need to do. It includes a difficulty rating and some notes that I made about it, as well as a link right to the video. So if it's a Patreon video, and there's a few of them scattered in there, you'll need to be a level 2 patron in order to view those videos, although you can still see the page and the materials and the notes I made about it. So it's a great value. I think there's a lot of good there, especially if you're looking for new projects to try. It gives you a direct link to a whole bunch of different ideas. So check it out, buy it, tell your friends about it. Okay, so here's my very oxidized ring, and I scratched the width of that I need to take out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and just use my saw, and I think I have a number double zero on here maybe. Not sure, I don't remember, but it should do for now. So let's just line it up on one of these cuts here. Put a little bit of lube on here. I got this stuff from Pepe Tools. It's really good. It lubricates a lot better than the stuff I was using. Okay, so if you can, try and keep the angle exactly the same. Mine's a little bit diagonal. I must not have been cutting very straight up and down. But either way, the angle's the same on both of them, so I shouldn't have too many problems. I will do a quick file to make sure there aren't any sawing burrs or anything left on it. But let's go solder that back together. Okay, so I cut myself a little hard silver solder. I know that there's no other types of solder in this because I made this band and I just used hard silver on it, or hard solder. So let's flux it. I'm using a self-pickling flux, that's why I'm able to solder like this. Okay, so let's put this solder on here. Make sure it's touching both sides. Just make sure we heat it pretty evenly. So I'm going to clean off any excess solder on the inside. I'm going to quickly round it back out using my plastic hammer. I'm going to tap it into shape here, but then do it on my knee to get it nice and round. The only other thing I'm going to do to this is take off the excess solder on the outside of the band, and then we'll throw it in the pickle for a while, and then it'll be ready to clean up. And let me show you the ring my mom bought that she wants sized. So it's a standard kind of rectangular piece of, it looks like denim lapis, and she needs this sized up. It's about a size, let's say, right now it's about a size 10, and she needs it to be about an 11.5, and so we're going to have to add a piece in here. But before we do that, like I said, we need to figure out a way to get this stone out of here, and sometimes that can be tricky. They make a lot of tools to do it, but I'm just going to use a T-pin here. I'm curious to hear what other people do when they're trying to remove a stone from a setting. I'm just going to try and gently pry it open a little bit, the tip of the T-pin. Trying to be careful of the stone so I don't scratch the stone. I did a video about, maybe 3 weeks ago, where I actually reused this pretty opal that I used in a ring a long time ago. And opals are pretty delicate and soft, so you have to be super careful. So when I pulled it out of the ring, instead of doing this, I actually just destroyed the ring to do it, because I was going to make something else out of it anyway. But I used the jeweler's saw to cut most of the way through the outside of the bezel and other parts of the ring, and then free it that way without having to, scrape something up and down the side of the stone like I'm doing here. Got to be a little careful you don't slip and poke your finger when you're doing stuff like this. You could use one of those wooden ring vise kind of things. I don't know what those are called exactly, but I have to remind myself to be patient when I'm doing this. So if you rush, then you'll tear the bezel or some other thing you really probably don't want to have happen. Okay. Actually glued some tag board in here. We need to do pretty much the same thing we did to size that van down now that we have the stone free. I'm going to set him over here so I don't lose him. But this time we're going to be adding a piece in rather than taking a piece out. So we just need to cut it once and we're going to spread it open. But we need to do the same thing we did to find out how big of a piece we need. So let me cut another strip here. So let's wrap it around here, and I'm going to pull it up against the flat spot while I'm doing this so that it's behaving like the ring does itself. Let's move it up here and do the same thing. So for this one we need to add in a piece about that size. So I'm going to keep that off to the side, and I'm going to go cut this with the saw. So I'm trying to rig something so that nothing can accidentally fall off of here. At least it's way less likely anyway. I don't think I'll have a problem because I'm going to use, since I don't know the kind of solder that they use, I'm going to use some of this extra easy paste solder that I have. Kind of rigged up a system where I have a piece of this 8 gauge half round, which is looks to be the kind that they used for this. I'm supporting this thing so it doesn't fall off, but I'm going to use, like I said, Pepe Tools sent me some different kinds of solder to try. So let's use some of this extra easy paste solder and see how it works. We'll dribble a little flux on there. Let's let that cool for a second. Alright, let's see if we can do that. Now is when I need to use my little thing here to measure how big of a piece we're going to add in here now. So right. Right about there. So I'm going to cut that off. So I'm going to cut that off with the saw. Let's do that, and I think I'm going to use a third hand too if I can figure out where to put it. Even though we're soldering it just on the top there, we still got to get this bottom part pretty hot. What you're seeing on the paste solder is the binder that they put in it to turn it into a paste is cooking off. So think we're real close to the size I was shooting for, so I'm going to use my rotary tool to smooth it out on the inside a little bit more, and that'll get us the rest of the way there, I think. I'm also going to take my bastard file, just like we did on the band, kind of smooth it out. Alright, so I will clean that up and we can reset the stone, and I think my mom will be pleased. So, alright. So that's how you go about sizing rings. I did one up and one down. So keep in mind, you need to consider all those things I talked about before you start doing this. Does it have a stone? Can you remove the stone? If you can't remove the stone, how can you protect it from the heat? Is it worth doing this for somebody? From my experience, people want you to fix their stuff for almost nothing, and it's kind of a lot of work to do. So when you tell them the price you're going to charge for it, they might not be happy. And that's one of the reasons it's hard to find people to work on repairing silver stuff, is because you may have only paid, you know, $100 for your piece or whatever, and they're going to charge you, you know, $75 or $100 to fix it or to size it for you, and that's hard to take when you didn't, you know, when you only paid as much as you paid for it. So okay, so let's let that clean up. Okay, well, that's just a couple of things to think about when you're sizing some rings. If you found that useful and enjoyed it, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button before you go. And take a moment to peruse some of my other content. I have well over 300 videos now, quite a bit of information available there. And if you're interested, I even have an ebook that I just published, which is a guide to all of the tutorials I did in 2023. So it contains a page for each of them. It has the original sketch I drew for it. It's got a final product picture of it. It's got a list of the materials you need to make it. It's got a difficulty rating. It's got some notes that I made about each project, you know, things to think about when you're doing it. And it's got a live link to the video. So I think it's a great value, as it puts a whole bunch of different projects right at your fingertips. So if you check the video down below, there's a bunch of important links, including a link to that. You can buy it straight through that. I'm also an affiliate of Pepe Tools, and they have some quality tools, so if you want to check out some of their selection, there's a link in my description down below as well. A few other links that are important. There's a link to my website. There's a link to the Buy Me a Coffee site if you want to give me a little influx of cash to help with supplies. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that. And there's a link to my merch store. So check those things out. All right, well, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Take care. Happy silversmithing.